Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful tools humanity has ever created, science. But we're not going to just talk about a bunch of facts and figures. Nope. We're going to look at the engine room, the process of how all that scientific knowledge actually gets built in the first place. Okay, so let's just dive right in with a big and maybe kind of surprising question. We're often taught that science is about proving things to be true, creating this big book of undeniable facts. But what if that's not the goal at all? What if its real strength lies somewhere else entirely? And this quote really gets to the heart of it. Science isn't some static library of answers, it's an active, ongoing thing. Think of it less like a noun and more like a verb. It's something you do. It's a method for asking smart questions and then really critically evaluating the answers you get. So, where does this whole dynamic process kick off? Well, it starts with the most human thing of all, just being curious. Looking at the world and wondering why or what if. So let's look at that very first step, how you turn a simple question into something you can actually test. Now, you've probably seen some version of these steps before, right? The classic scientific method. It all starts with just noticing something, an observation, that sparks a question. And that question leads to the centerpiece of this early stage, the hypothesis. So a hypothesis isn't just some wild guess pulled out of thin air. It's an educated guess. And the most important part, the real key, is that it has to be testable. A good hypothesis sticks its neck out and makes a specific prediction, usually in that classic, if I do this, then that will happen format. Let's make this super simple. Say you notice the plant on your desk looks a little sad. That's your observation. You ask yourself, why isn't it growing? And then you form a testable hypothesis. Not just maybe it needs light, but something really precise. If this plant gets more light, then it will grow taller. See that? It's a clear prediction we can now go and test. So, having a great hypothesis is one thing, but it's pretty useless without a way to test it fairly. So, how do you actually design an experiment that gives you a clear, reliable answer? This is where the whole idea of a fair test comes in, and it's absolutely crucial. This is where we get really precise. In any good experiment, you've got two key variables. The independent variable. That's the one thing you, the scientist, intentionally change. For our plant, that's the amount of light. Then there's the dependent variable. That's what you measure to see the result. You're checking to see if it depends on the change you made. In this case, that's the plant's growth. But here's maybe the most important part of all. How do you know the extra light is what actually helped the plant? I mean, maybe it wasn't the light, maybe it was a change in the weather, or you just got better at watering it. To know for sure, you need a control group. This is the unsung hero of the experiment. It's your baseline for comparison that doesn't get the special treatment. And just look at how this works in practice. For our little plant experiment, to be fair, everything else, the water, the soil, the pot size, all of it has to be kept exactly the same for both plants. The only thing we change is the one thing we're testing, our independent variable, the amount of light. That way, we can be really confident that any difference in growth is actually because of the light, and not something else. Okay, so you've run your FAIR test, you've measured your results, and wow, your plant with more light grew taller. Awesome. You've proven your hypothesis, right? Well, not so fast. Let's get into what might be the most misunderstood and honestly the most important part of this entire process. This right here is the heart of the matter. Science, as a whole, avoids the word prove. Why? Because it sounds so final, so absolute, like the case is closed forever. Instead, you'll hear scientists talk about evidence supporting a hypothesis. This means, hey, so far all the data lines up with our idea. It's a really strong vote of confidence for sure, but it always leaves the door open for new evidence to come along later. And honestly, this is the absolute superpower of science. The fact that any idea, no matter how well established, could theoretically be overturned by better evidence, that's what keeps the whole process honest and always moving forward. It's a built-in, self-correcting mechanism. It's a feature, not a bug. All right, so an experiment from one lab supports a hypothesis. That's great. But how does that single finding become part of our broader scientific understanding? How does it get from one person's lab notebook out into the real world? Well, it has to pass through this really critical checkpoint called peer review. Before a study gets published, it's sent to other experts in the same field, anonymously. And their job is basically to try and poke holes in it, to question the methods and challenge the conclusions. It's a tough quality control process designed to catch errors and biases and make sure the research is actually solid. So when you zoom all the way out, you see this entire process is built on just a few core principles. It all kicks off with curiosity. From there, it needs rigorous testing to move beyond just guessing. This creates data, which then demands evidence-based reasoning. And wrapping around the whole thing is critical thinking, which is what keeps the process honest every single step of the way. So why does any of this matter to you if you're not a scientist in a lab coat? Well, because every single day you are bombarded with claims about your health, about technology, about the world. Understanding this process, asking for the evidence, wondering about the control group, is your best possible toolkit for navigating all that information and spotting the misinformation. Okay, let's bring it all home. The point of science isn't to hand down these final, absolute truths from on high. It's about providing a reliable, a transparent, and most importantly, a self-correcting method for trying to understand the world. This process, this way of thinking, isn't just for scientists. It's a mindset. It's a toolkit for curiosity that really belongs to everyone. It gives you a framework for thinking critically about pretty much any claim or idea you come across. So now that you've got the toolkit, what's the first question you're going to tackle?